So today's chapter is called Rajavidya Rajaguhya Yoga. Rajavidya Rajaguhya Yoga. If you remember, we had discussed and we mentioned that Bhagavad Gita goes very much deep into the essence of existence. Its essence of existence. So it is not just the what I should do's and don'ts, but it is more of going beyond ethics, beyond morals. So all these days we have covered about 8 chapters, and he has been talking about getting out of grief. Trying first chapter, if you see how it starts, Bhagavad Gita starts saying that you need to get out of grief because what you assume as your cause of worry, sorrow, disappointment is actually not a sorrow at all. It is completely a misunderstanding. It is completely illusion that you are suffering. Actually, there is nothing like suffering. He comes to that gradually because he has to bring Arjuna out of that misery of which he is facing, because he has to fight with his own people. So here Krishna brings him out slowly, he makes him understand the reality of life. Most of the time we live in ignorance. We don't know what is truth. And as we move towards spiritual path and understanding what it is, the biggest gift of spirituality is wisdom. And as we become wiser, we try to see the things very, very clearly. Everything becomes so crystal clear, step by step, of course, that we start enjoying that, and then we start performing our actions, our responsibilities with satisfaction, with no stress, because it starts appearing that there is something beyond and some support which gives us enormous strength. First thing is, it gives us enormous strength. It makes us fearless. It gives us more integrity, and all this we will start experiencing and manifesting also, actually physically as well as mentally. So but that is still a very lower level. Today, if you see this chapter, he hits to the point. He takes us to a very completely highest platform. He takes us. That's why he calls it as Rajavidya. Rajavidya is the royal science. It is nothing but the spiritual science, but the ultimate truth, absolute truth, what it is. Just by reading the verses, we may not be able to get the clarity, but I am extremely grateful to my Guruji also, Swami Nirbhayananda Saraswati, who has been teaching us all this, plus Swami Sarva Priyananda, who has given, you can refer, I will share his videos also, his commentary on these chapters, crystal clear with lot of examples, and today I have taken that as reference, and I will try to simplify and give the summary. His lectures are quite lengthy, but in depth and full of clarity. 1 hour for 2 shlokas. So that much is his knowledge, profound knowledge, and his experience. Obviously, we are in no way we can be compared, but that has been my guide today. So let's see, as I said, how best we can together understand this chapter. So this is called Rajavidya Rajaguhya Yoga. So what it is comes in the first shloka itself. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshamyana suyave jnanam vijnana sahitam yajnatva mokshase shubhat. So Krishna says, because this is, I am going to tell you Guhyatamam, that means the profoundest secret deepest secret, guhyatamam, pravakshami, I will tell you, anasuyave, says Arjuna, I am telling this to you, which is told to you because you are a person without asuya or jealousy, because you are a pure minded, pure hearted, without any jealousy, so you become eligible to learn this guhyatamam, that means which is secret, topmost, because you are not envious of anyone. I shall now impart this highly confidential, and guhyatama means extreme, confidential knowledge with wisdom. Jnana vijnana sahitam. I will impart that knowledge which is with wisdom, upon knowing which yad jnatva mokshase ashubhat, you shall be free from the evil. I shall tell you the most secret or mysterious, you can say, which is very profound, which not many will have an access to, because it's very, very deep, and you are eligible. It's not enough. We should see to whom we are imparting knowledge. Is he in a position to receive that? Is he eligible? Is he competent? Can he receive this knowledge which we are giving him, which is knowledge with wisdom. Vijnana is actually experience, but that experience comes with wisdom. And if when you learn this, you are free from all the evils, means you can take ashubha is evil, or miseries, or bondage, whatever. So that I am going to tell you. So two things are here. This is a very deep truth which not everybody can understand, and it goes deeper and deeper to, and those people who are already, he could have made this as a first chapter, but no, he has come gradually. He could have started with that, but he started with Sankhya Yoga, Karma Yoga, then slowly he has come to this chapter. And also he says Arjuna has this eligibility. So people become curious and creative when they stop being jealous. Arjuna was very focused on two things of Arjuna here, make him eligible to learn. One is he is always curious to learn, and he trusts Krishna as supreme being, not supreme so far, as somebody who's beyond an ordinary thing. His avatara Purusha, still it has not come. He considers him as a much wiser person than him, and he always thinks of everybody. So some superhuman qualities Krishna has got. So he is very curious to learn. He is listening with all concentration, and Krishna gets motivated to teach him. And then he is going to teach this jnana vijnana sahitam, that means knowledge with wisdom. Anything, and this vidya means knowledge, but it is a kind of science. In the next he says it is that vidya is also called as science, and any advancement in knowledge without wisdom, knowledge will give you the facts, wisdom will give you the ability to use it in a discriminated way. You should develop the ability to use whatever we have learned in the most appropriate way. Otherwise, if that wisdom is not there, it leads to disasters. For example, preparing these nuclear weapons, when to use, when not to use. You learn so much of knowledge. Do we use it to show off people and show our power? No, it should be, any knowledge should be used for the benefit of the society, for benefit of the mankind. So that is the wisdom. That means to use our ability as and when required, how much it is required, in the most disciplined fashion. That is wisdom, and therefore always Bhagavad Gita insists on wisdom. Jnana vijnana, that is extremely important. Then the next shloka he says, so he says you are eligible, and I will tell you the deepest of the deepest, most profound secret, guhyatamam. Raja vidya raja guhyam pavitram idamuttamam Pratyakshavagam dharmyam susukham kartum avyayam. So every word in this is very meaningful. So he says Rajavidya, Rajavidya, Rajaguhyam. Raja means royal, royal means highest, supreme. So this, of all the sciences, this is the highest. So it is a royal and highest of all sciences. Rajavidya, Rajaguhyam, highest, it's a royal and highest of all sciences. Profoundest, deepest, because you have to dive deep into the system to understand. And it is pavitram, pure, and it also means it's a purifier. Pure. Rajavidya, Rajaguhyam, pavitram idam uttamam. So it is what I say, royal and highest of all sciences, profoundest, deepest, pure, and supreme, uttamam. And one more very important, Pratyakshavagam. Pratyakshavagam means actually it can be perceived, it can be felt, just as, but in a different, with a different tool, of course, but you can feel it, you can experiment it, and you can verify it. And it is a dharmyam. Dharmyam means code, I mean it's a law, or it's a code of ethics, or code of conduct, which is suitable for the society, which is very suitable for the society. Dharma means what? Which helps the societal development, says Swami Ranganathanandaji, whose book I am referring along with Swami Sarvapriyananda's commentary. So dharma is a code of conduct, and which should, practice of dharma should be such that it should help the society. It is not just I go sit, close my eyes, deep meditation, I get elevated. Of no use is such a knowledge which does not speak of dharma. Dharma means not the religion per se. It is something which is going to bring good to the society, to the community. So this Vidya, we are talking about spiritual knowledge only, the absolute truth, the science of spirituality. We are talking about that. This is Raj, but the profoundest, it has gone much higher than what we have learned so far. Another one step. So Rajavidya, Rajaguhyam, Pavitram, Idam Uttamam, and Pratyakshavagam. You can verify it, and you can test it, and it is Dharmyam and Susukham. It's not so difficult, easy to practice. Kartum, Susukham Kartum, Avyayam, and it's not going to reduce, it's not going to be, it's not perishable. Avyaya means not perishable or reducing in its content or intensity, nothing like that. It is imperishable, eternal, and it is dharma. Okay, so very, very beautifully he says that this knowledge is, it's not at all difficult, because do we feel bhakti is difficult, bhakti or whatever? If bhakti is to be taken as this vidya can be of different types, bhakti yoga, karma, whatever. We have seen that. So he says, if you see every word, one is, it is a royal. Royal means extremely highest merit, because beyond this, what are you going to experience? The meaning comes in next two shlokas. This is the one where everything becomes crystal clear of our existence. So this is the Rajavidya, spiritual, this one, and it is pure. It purifies means gets rid of all your evil things. And dharma, here we must say, Krishna always says that this dharma, spiritual knowledge, yetu dharmyamritam. In 12th chapter he says dharma amrita. This dharma is also going to give you amrita. Amrita means dharma for the society, as I said. Amrita is for your evolution. So spiritual knowledge in the true sense, whatever the vidya, what in all the chapters, but he is highlighting it here. So this spiritual knowledge is going to give us, it's going to be a tool for betterment of the community if we practice it. At the same time, it's going to make you, bring you out of this misery and amrita, immortal, or it's going to make you completely free from misery. So amritatva is that, amrita shrunvantu vishve amritasya putraha. That's what Upanishad say. We are all actually that bliss. So when you practice this, it's going to take you over there, it's going to take you to that state, and it's going to make you totally free from misery, and it's also going to help externally. So external development as well as internal development. So these are the two benefits of practicing spirituality in its essence. This whatever is talking to us, when we understand this, it's going to clear all our doubts. And when we change, obviously when we change, society will change. We keep blaming the society, we keep blaming the people around, and we become negative. But actually when we focus inside and when we change, there's one more good speaker called Acharya Prashant. If you some of you would have heard, and I think I had shared it sometime back. Extremely good speaker, and he's an IIT IIM graduate, but he's devoting himself entirely for the for spreading this message, and he runs one Advaitic center something. I will share that with you. So he's the one who, in his talks also you will come to know, he's the one who's also making Advaita philosophy or Vedanta very, very simple. That's what he says. Initially I thought I should become a bureaucrat. He cleared his UPSC, IAS examinations and all that. But then first, when you go out, you see so many imperfections outside. How many things you can change. Today I shared that. Changing the world is like, I shared some, Mataji had shared that clipping. So cutting of one book, Vedantic book. So it says you cannot change the world. It is always going to be like dog's tail, which can never be straightened. But when you go there and try to change yourself, every stimulus, every imperfection that you see, if you concentrate, if you take that as a challenge and improvise, work on yourself, then you will become straight. You may become straight. World will never become straight. So don't keep breaking your head only in changing the world. First you change yourself, but those imperfections will trigger that change in you. It will stimulate that change in you. So that means those imperfections are needed. But when you change yourself, then what happens is everything appears as it is, and you will try to understand the reason for these imperfections. So when you will start behaving properly, and then you spread, and some of the imperfect souls may try to improvise themselves. So that way it works. In other words, when we work on this Raja Vidya, what the Bhagavad Gita says is Dharma Amrita. It works on you as Amrita, and then it works externally as Dharma. One thing is they also, and you will become more and more less imperfections. So that much of inputs in the society will automatically reduce, isn't it? At least my imperfections, my sins or my mistakes will be reduced because I am working on myself. So that way the society overall, so that may ignite others to take spiritual path. So that way we are slowly we will bring about a change, and the change can never be brought out without spiritual intervention. Without a spiritual evolution, without spiritual manipulation, internal as well as external change can never happen, or it may happen temporarily. Permanent changes come only through spiritual manipulations or spiritual or divine intervention. We can call it that way also. So this is therefore dharma is considered to be in spiritual path. It is not only dharma, it is amritatva also. So our moksha inside as well as outside. So that is the advantage of following, and this will be, as I said, eternal, avyayam, and it is not difficult. It only needs a change in the mindset. It just has to bring about a change in mindset. Is it so difficult? Supposing bhakti is one of the powerful of this vidya. It's one of the powerful only. To reach there we need bhakti, depending on our mentality, as we said. So bhakti is bhakti so difficult? What do you feel? Is it difficult to bring bhakti in our day-to-day activities? What do you think? Is it so difficult? Haven't we practiced? But is it possible for everybody? How many of us sit with Bhagavad Gita? How many of us read Bhagavad Gita? How many of us go through? It's not that everybody can do it, but If you mind, then it is just surrender. If you mind, just withdrawing yourself into this path, it is not at all difficult. Once you know the benefits of bhakti, benefits of this Rajavidya, so he says, Susukham, Kartum Avyayam, but not for all. It is for people. If you think you can do it, then it is not going to be difficult at all. Our path, we have already started practicing it. We are all just simple, let's say the process of attending the sessions, simple process of listening, simple process of, conducting for me. It's not at all difficult because we enjoy it. So for those who have this mindset, definitely it is Susukham, Kartum and Avyayam. Never, if those points, if those concepts, if we are clear about it, if we have conditioned our mind that this is how Karma Yoga, Karmanyevadikaraste. Many times we discuss, whenever we feel low or something, we remember Gita and again we implement it. So it has not reduced, rather it has increased, or rather it remains permanently trying to solve day-to-day problems. Therefore, Dharmyam. That means it's applicable to the current prevailing conditions. So having said that, only just we have to bring this spirituality in every activity, just like seasoning, or when we season for salads or in our Indian dishes, for everything we have, how much it improves, isn't it? So here they say it is like zeros. Zeros are zeros. When you put one behind that, if there are 5 zeros, 5 zeros, dollars or rupees, whatever, without one it has no value. When you put one, so much of money it is, isn't it? So like that one is spirituality. Whatever we were doing in day-to-day activity had no value. But when that spirituality comes, when we start bringing him, when we start living in that in that state of mind, maybe in the consciousness, if we can, then that nothingness becomes everything. Nothingness becomes everything. So it is just the mindset, change of the mindset, nothing beyond that, and that is Susukham. But we have seen that takes some time for everybody. So therefore, if you practice that, then it can be lived in day-to-day life. That is called as Pratyakshavagam. Pratyaksha Pramana. Pratyaksha Pramana means verify. In our spirituality also, just like the regular science, this is also science, because it says unless you verify by yourself, don't believe it. And Krishna says it is a verifiable science. Do you all agree that it is well validated, this is a science which can be proved? It has an evidence. Do you all agree with this? Kavita?
Yes, ma'am, definitely.
Yeah, Suvarchala? Yes,
ma'am.
It can be. In what way it can be validated, or it has been validated in our day-to-day life? How have you seen this? Pratyaksha Vagam. To some extent, we have not reached that. How have you seen?
I can give a proof that I'm experiencing some happiness. So I will be the evidence.
Evidence, yes. So you are experiencing happiness after becoming more.
If I do any puja, I experience some happiness or something delightful nature to some extent of time.
Yes.
After that, again I remember God. Again it will continue.
Yes,
that will be the evidence.
Correct. That is the evidence. So you can, isn't it? Pratyakshavagam means yes. But many people say that no. Recently, actually, I wanted to give that example. Somebody went to an astrologer. My recent experience with a friend. They went to that astrologer, and astrology says your stars are like this. There is some. If you believe, or there could be some. People who believe said there is a change in the position of the planet. So Shani is there. So you do this puja, and by then things will be better. Astrology is 90%, somebody said this state, psychology, isn't it? Because everything works on your mindset. So this girl started, they told her to do some puja, Hanuman puja, for 42 days. And then it will be okay. And after 20 days, her another friend told, why don't you come and be there? In your name, in your nakshatram, they are doing this puja. You come and be there at that. So she made that sankalpa, gave money, and then she said they are doing every day in my name. This is what many people feel, but actually that is not so. Even if you have gone to an astrologer, if somebody has suggested a solution, you need to be there in presence of God. If they have told you to do some puja, you be there. So, but some people say in your name, since your nakshatra is being told, it's assumed that you are there. So that pujari, priest will do the puja in your name, in your nakshatra, and you will get the benefits. So this girl believed. After 20 days, she came and told her friend, nothing is happening. Nothing is happening. No change is happening. So she said, you asked me to consult this person, and I consulted according to, see, nothing happened. I gave so much money. What happened? Now, let us assume that this astrologer is telling the scientific Pratyakshavagam. Let's assume that he believes that if this girl goes to Hanuman temple, does a prayer every day and gives it there also, but she believes in that and it works for 42 days, probably her psychology changes. Maybe she will accept the conditions, or her perception about the problem changes. Therefore, the problem's intensity comes down. This may be the science behind the solution which the astrologer has told her. Now, what is the method she has taken? She gave the money, the priest is doing the puja, and she is enjoying. She is not at all concerned. On 20th day, she wants that miracle to happen by that priest who is doing that puja. Now, where is her mindset? Is there any bhakti? So, Pratyakshavagam, verification, validation of any scientific principle, including this Vedantic principle, means you should follow the methodology. Method should be correct. The protocol should be followed. Even in science, don't we say, if the protocol is not followed, whatever results you get are invalid. If the protocol is not followed, that means the method is not followed, the standard operating procedures are not followed, then whatever you get is invalid, and you may not get also, and then you blame your hypothesis, or the research itself was wrong, this drug doesn't work, this method doesn't work. Your method is wrong. So Pratyakshavagam means you can verify provided you follow certain proper methodology. Many people feel what you are talking about spirituality, what you are talking about this, it doesn't work like that. I don't think it's going to work. That is because they are not following the procedures properly. What is the procedure? Next shloka I say Shraddha is important. Exactly, the 42 days puja, if you do every day early morning when he is doing your puja, be there, or if you are at home, remember him in your that prayer, that commitment to that process, that will help. Otherwise nothing will help such people. Neither they will help themselves, nor they will help others. On the contrary, whatever has been told to be followed, discipline, indriya nigraha, ahara, pratyahara, everything, if it is followed, because those things will come in the entire Bhagavad Gita, we have covered few aspects, meditation, if everything is followed in principle as per the protocol, definitely it is going to bring a change in you and outside. Therefore he says, though Pratyakshavagam is verification, but now Suvarchala said, I did the puja, I felt delighted, because she was involved, her mind was involved. She did the puja in a particular form, in a particular method, where basic thing is Shraddha. Basic requirement of a procedure is do it with devotion. If you don't do it with devotion and expect that this should work, nothing will work. Neither the spirituality will work, nor any procedure in life will not work. Anything will not give such people any solace, because they don't have faith in anything. So Pratyakshavagam means it can be practiced in day-to-day life, but conditions apply. That means you have to follow certain basic principles. So that is what he says, and then he says in the next shloka, Ashraddhana Purusha Dharmasyasya Parantapa अप्राप्य मां निवर्तन्ते मृत्यु samsaravartmani. So this is a very clearly he says ashraddhadhana means one who doesn't have shraddha or faith, one who doesn't have shraddha or faith in me, in whom we should have faith in the person who is telling this. First of all, what he is telling, if we respect him only, we will have faith, isn't it? If a person is giving a solution, first you must have faith in that person, then only you will follow. So he says, people who have no faith in me or in this dharma, ashraddhadhanaha purusha, people, dharmasyasya parant, are unable to attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Ashraddhadhana purusha dharmasya asya. In this dharma, what I am speaking, if they don't have any faith, O conqueror, Parantapa means he is addressing Arjuna. Aprapya, dharmasya asya parant. Aprapya mam nivartante. They will not get me and they will come back where? Mrityu samsara vartmani. They will come back to this world of where? In the cycle of birth and death. They will come back in this. So, if that Shraddha is not there in following anything, then not only they will be cribbing all through their life because they don't trust anybody, they don't trust any process, neither they have solution. So that is the kind of life they are living, and they die with the same mentality to come back again. On the other hand, if a person wants to improve sincerely and he goes to somebody, gets some information, reads Bhagavad Gita, believes Krishna and practices that very, very sincerely with devotion. Devotion means having faith in the system and devotion to the practice also. Both he does. If he does that, then eventually, may not be as we have told, not immediately, eventually he will be liberated from the sorrows, from the miseries. He will know how to handle people, he will know how to handle situations because he is learning. Every day he is learning. Every day he is verifying. Every day he is validating and he gets more and more conviction, belief. He starts the process with Shraddha. He believes. Even in our scientific experiments, we should have that belief. Our Shraddha in that science is what? Believing that this process gives me some result. What is the result? I don't know. But this, I believe this method, this protocol, this recruitment of patients or whatever we are doing, that is the methodology which is already validated. So it has been published. Therefore, I am going in the right direction. You believe in your own process and therefore we subject it for review and we get the inputs and we believe in those inputs because they are all learned people, the reviewers. And therefore, when we start, we are full of devotion and we believe that process is good. Results may be whatever, but we believe the process is good. Therefore, a spiritual, in Raja Vidya, this Vidya, spiritual science also, we must start belief with the belief or with the faith in the process. Let the results be whatever. This process is going to take me somewhere, let me see. We keep asking questions with unwavering faith, actually, unwavering trust in the process. It has been told. That means we give lot of time for the things to change. We don't keep testing every now and then. Have I improved? Have things improved? Has this man improved? Has that lady improved? No, we should not do that because it takes time. That is the system. System depends on patience, perseverance, commitment, hard work. These are all the the SOPs. This is what is required. So if you follow with all this, then you can expect something. So Shraddha. So then what happens is, not only you will be contented, satisfied and happy in life, or what I should say, peaceful with no conflicts, because you start getting wisdom. That's on the path that I am always particular on the way. What happens on the way in the journey? But ultimately you will reach that goal. So for the goal, Shraddha is extremely important, because this will open up, the Shraddha in spiritual science opens up a dimension which we are totally unaware. It's a deep dive into that dimension. All the explanations have been given that way. So it's otherwise we will be living a life of an animal. This Shraddha, this thinking is the unique gift given to mankind. Human being is endowed with this buddhi, thinking, which differentiates him from other animals, and this path has to be dived one or the other day. We have to get into this path deep within, because then only we will be totally differentiated from animals. Otherwise, sleeping, drinking, eating, procreating, all these sensual pleasures, all these are what animals also do. What the human being should do, he should dive deep. Now, having said that, he says, Maya tatamidam sarvam jagat avyaktamurtina matsthani sarvabhutani na chaham teshvavasthitaha. So from here starts actually the link with the consciousness. So he says, Maya tatamidam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina matsani sarvabhutani. This entire cosmic manifestation, sarvam, is pervaded by me. Pervaded means I enter. Entire cosmic manifestation is pervaded by me in my Maya tatamidam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina. Avyakta means unmanifested. Please listen, these 2-3 shlokas are little complex. Entire manifestation is pervaded by me. Me means the supreme consciousness. We are now thinking of Krishna is telling, but he represents that nirguna, nirakara parabrahma. Nirguna means with no attributes. He is just without any, he is all pervading, with no shape, no form, nothing. So that is manifest. He is talking about that. That is pervading this entire cosmic manifestation. Whatever we are seeing around is pervaded by me in my unmanifested form, avyakta. That means we are seeing this table, we are seeing people, but in that there is unmanifested paratattva, consciousness. We will explain more about that. And then all living beings dwell in me, but I do not dwell in them. We'll see what it is. First he says, I pervade and all beings dwell in me, but I do not dwell in them. What is the meaning? We feel it is little jargon of words, but actually what it is unmanifested is subtle. Unmanifested means subtle, very very sukshma, subtle, which cannot be perceived by the ordinary senses. We can see this cup, I can see this table, I can see this book, because they are all gross. But unmanifested means it is not, it is there. That's what we believe. As we said, Shraddha, we should believe in what he is saying, but it is not seen by our eyes, or we cannot hear. So that is the meaning of unmanifested. Like he says, just like ornaments are made of gold. So we can see the earrings, the necklace, the bangles. That is easily seen. I can see the bangles. But what is it made of? Gold. But we often ignore that gold. The pot, clay pot, is made of clay. We are more concerned about the external manifestation. But what is there behind? That is the clay. Similarly, he says that entire universe is existing. What makes this existence? What makes it existence? That is the super consciousness. The consciousness is making this existence possible. So they call it as existence consciousness. Existence consciousness is a consciousness. Everything is changing. I change, you change, the things change, everything is changing. But because he is pervading, because of that will of consciousness, because of his nature of pervading everything, we can perceive the existence. In other words, everything is existing because of that consciousness. That is the fundamental. But it makes little complex, because he says that all living beings dwell in me, but I do not dwell in them. All living beings dwell in me, I do not dwell in them. The analogy given to this is, if you have, let us say, the clay is there and the pot is there. So the pot is made of the clay. So the clay dwells in the pot. Does the pot live in the clay? This is one example. Does the pot live in the clay? No. It is pot made out of the clay, and clay is there everywhere in the pot. But the pot is not in the clay. Pot doesn't live in the clay. Clay lives in the pot. But that is what he says. I do not dwell in them. Sorry, I'm little, it is a complex thing. They all dwell in me, but I do not dwell in them. In the sense, the clay is not defined by the pot. The pot may be defined by the clay. Clay is not defined by the pot. One more example, then I will ask you what you have understood. The waves are there and there is an ocean. So the waves come, waves go. So the water and the waves. So water is in the waves. Is the wave in the water? No, wave disappears. Okay. So he says, all living beings dwell in me. I do not dwell in the, you cannot say the water is the wave. The wave is part of the water. I hope I have made it clear. In what is eternal here, water is eternal. What is eternal in the pot? The clay is eternal. So therefore we say clay is pervading the pot. The clay is pervading the pot. But we cannot say that clay is the pot. Clay is not the pot. Pot is modification of the clay. Therefore the universe has this clay. The pot has the clay. Therefore universe has the consciousness, pure consciousness. This is always eternal. The clay is always eternal with respect to pot, I am saying. Water is always eternal with respect to the waves. But the waves keep coming, disappearing. Pot can break, but the clay is always there. Just like that, universe may change its form here, there, everything. But the manifestation which makes the universe, previously also we have discussed, no? It shines, and therefore the Prakriti appears. Without that it doesn't. It's extension of that. It pervades. And he is saying, this is the meaning of I do not dwell in them, means in that form. I do not dwell in them. I am pervading them. Alright, all living beings dwell in me. The waves are in me. They come out of me, they get into me. The pot comes out, it comes back to the clay. I am not the pot, no, I am the clay. I am the pure consciousness. Have you understood this point? Kavita?
Ma'am, I understood the pot and the clay, but when Krishna is telling I do not dwell in them is a little, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not able to accept that.
I do not dwell in them, andre. Clay is there. He doesn't, what he wants to insist is, don't call me the pot. Simplified way. Pot is, because it is changeable. This is how I do not dwell in the pot per se. But what is pot filled of? Do we say? That's what he says. I have taken exactly from him. What is the pot filled with? Is it filled with something? No. Is it filled with clay? Is the pot filled with clay? Do we say pot is made of clay or filled with clay? It may be filled with milk, whatever, some water, something. It's not filled with clay. But you feel the pot everywhere, inside, outside, middle, everywhere there is clay. So what makes the pot? It is a clay. It is not the pot has got a shape or something. And there are different pots. For all the pots it is the same clay. Isn't it? But clay is only one. Clay is only one. We can link it like that. Therefore he says, I am there, I am there, I am there. I am not in this pot, that pot, no. I am the clay. I am clay. I am not the pot. Pot is a modified form. He goes step by step. I am everything, he says. But at this point, he is taking us. First he says, I am all pervading. Then he says, the meaning is, otherwise it's confusing. Otherwise, if you literally translate, no, all beings, living beings dwell in me, but I do not dwell in them. It's contradictory. It appears it is two contradictory statements. But actual meaning is that they are the form adu, changeable, all that. But who am I? I am the all pervading consciousness. So they dwell in me. The pot breaks, comes back to the clay. So they dwell in me. I don't dwell in pot. Understood, no? Like that. So to some extent, I think. Peter, any thoughts on this? Are we able to get this?
Is this similar to Sri Chaitanya, when the notion of achintya bheda abheda?
Achintya abheda.
Yeah, achintya bheda abheda, the inconceivable difference and sameness.
Yes.
All at once.
Correct. Difference and sameness. Yes, correct. There is a difference also, there is a sameness. When it modifies, it becomes different. When it goes back, it is one. When it modifies, it becomes different. When it goes back, it is the same. So, he says, he is not, the pure consciousness in this modified form becomes pot and all. But I am not the pot, I am the clay only. I am the pure consciousness which will not change. But what changes is Prakriti and all that is different. But in the root, the base is the pure consciousness is unchangeable. This thing, it will only give the shape to that, but that is very, very temporary. That differentiates. What is the oneness now? He is the same in different pots. It's the same clay. To some extent, what is the application in the universe also? There are people made of the same consciousness. Just like different pots are made of same clay, but some pots are big, some pots are small, some are colored, some are not colored. But that should not be a significant part for us to assess. In the universe, we must understand that everything is pervaded by the same consciousness, but manifestation superficially will be different. Superficially, because they are all made of Prakriti. So people are also like that, of different varieties, but the basic connection between all is the same consciousness. So you can read that and understand better, but it's not very easy to understand. So pure existence, pure consciousness is the one which pervades everything and from which everything appears as it were, and they go back. But existence or consciousness remains uniform all through without undergoing any mutations, any changes. No, it will be the same. All living beings also keep coming, going, everything is there. But they are all superficial manifestations, just like waves on an ocean. The water is the same. It remains eternal. So that is the principle, that is the meaning of this. I will not get into too much of details. And then in the next shloka, little more he will say. He will say that, and then, okay. After that he says, I think this is third shloka, right? Yeah, fifth one. न च मत्स्थानि भूतानि पश्य मे योगमैश्वरं भूतभृत् न च भूतस्थो ममात्मा भूतभावनः. Now he goes to one more step. He says, nor do beings exist in me. This is my divine Maya. He himself goes step by step. Third thing he says, it's not that they exist in me also. He says, it's not that they exist in me also. It is that Maya, Pashyame, Yogam, Aishwaram. Although I am the creator and sustainer of all beings, I am not influenced by them or caught by any material nature. But the meaning of this part of it, Nacha Matsthani Bhutani, Swamiji says, Sarvapriyanandaji, he says, it's not that alone. I am there in every bit of this universe. I am in every bit. Nacha Matsthani Bhutani. Nor do beings exist in me. That means there is no question of existence. I am pervading as Yoga Maya in everything, isn't it? He himself says he is there in Prakriti also. First he says, I pervade everything. Then he says they are two different. Then he says, no, I am pervading in them also as Prakriti. So if you can remember, you can get into this. Otherwise, we need to have a separate, complete discussion on this Yoga Maya. And so this is basically what he's telling is, this entire universe is existing. It's his creation. And we have seen there are two. One is the consciousness and the other one is Prakriti. And this Prakriti, it appears as a modified form of this. This consciousness is eternal, unchanging, and it is there in you, I, in this body, outside, everything. Both the places it is there. Then second thing is, he says that all these manifestations are my superficial modifications, and I am in them. I pervade them, but I am not in them. I am not the pot per se. I am the clay still. So then third thing he says, the pot doesn't exist. Pot is nothing but the clay. That means the universe is nothing but entire thing is consciousness. So if you can understand or comprehend this statement, it is fine. Otherwise, we go to the next one where he gives an example to substantiate this. Yatha kashasthito nityam vayu sarvatra go mahan tatha sarvani bhutani matsthani ityupadharaya. So here he says, now you imagine as the mighty air, circulating air, moving always everywhere, rests in the space. That is, he says, yatha akashasthito nityam vayuhu sarvatra go mahan. Mighty air, mahan means mahan vayu. It's so huge. It moves everywhere. But where does it stay? It stays in the space. Therefore, in a similar way, all the beings, they rest in me. So just like the space gives space for the air, he gives space for us, and we are living in him. That we should understand. All the beings rest in me. All the beings rest in me. That means we are all in him. The medium, imagine the pot is in the clay. The clay makes the pot, but actually pot is in the clay, because inside, outside, middle, everywhere there is clay. The pot is in the clay. Therefore, the beings are in the consciousness. We are all in the consciousness. We are all living in the consciousness. Whatever modifications we have done, all these modifications, they are called as Rupa Vyavahara Nama, it seems. Just like something gets, we are not talking about Saguna Brahma, Nirguna Brahma. That consciousness is called Nirguna, Nirakara, no shape, everything, eternal, pure consciousness, pure existence. That, Chaitanya, whatever you call, that is pervading everything, and we are occupying in that medium, that consciousness. We are all in that. That means our thoughts, mind, eyes, nose, body, everything is a part of that consciousness. There is no difference at all. But because of his Yoga Maya, it gets converted into a pot, and then the pot starts having different things, and that pot gets filled by our mind, thoughts, everything. Let's assume that way, and then we start getting onto the different thought process, and that is how we get carried away in the Maya. But the truth is what? Truth is, I am the consciousness. This whole thing is consciousness. Every bit in this body is consciousness. Every cell, every atom, every any atomic interaction also is nothing but conscious. Then who am I? I am just nothing. It is just the consciousness. This is the truth. This is where we are supposed to reach. Then where is the question of suffering, disaster, miseries, everything? Nothing. So that is happening in the universe. All this is happening. So now he gives another example. Just like the air in the space, if you have a screen, and one more thing he says, I'll just complete that. All beings rest in me. Yeah. Upadharaya. Just a moment. Yeah, so all of them. So wind, no, it doesn't have, if there is no space, where will it flow, where will it rest? Likewise, the universe needs that concept you imagine, because later we have to realize this truth. So just like that, we need this consciousness. We means actually we don't exist. As long as we say we, this lower this is Yoga Maya, we say this body, let's say, we need that, we are all in that. But every cell, as I said, everything is consciousness only. And what I was trying to say is, yeah, he gives this example, and that consciousness and this universe, they don't get influenced by each other. They don't. He is sustaining everything. His entire universe is sustained by the this all pervading consciousness only. The 5th chapter, no, I said. Yeah. Tatha sarvani bhutani matsthani iti upadharaya. They exist in him, but he doesn't, that consciousness doesn't undergo any change. Just like when the wind blows, the space has no effect of that wind. Similarly, whatever happens in the universe, nothing, this is very important. I think this point we must be very clear. Just like the space, the air, when it blows, sometimes it blows slowly, sometimes it blows very seriously, I mean like a storm. Whatever it does anything happen to the space? No, nothing happens. So similarly, whatever is happening externally in this universe, our thoughts, our sorrows, our reactions, or any kind of physical disasters, it's all happening in the universe, in that, against that background or the sustenance which is brought about that consciousness will be unchanged, unperturbed, not influenced. This is all happening. Waves, no, just like waves go up and down. The tsunami will come. What happens to the lower water? Nothing, no change. Water remains water, ocean remains ocean. Similar to that, if we change when we start realizing, I am the pure consciousness, Satchidananda, whatever is happening externally will not disturb me, that is the end of our suffering. That's the end of our suffering. We must always dehypnotize with whatever we are conditioned and get back to this state. So he says, if there is a screen and you project a movie projection, what happens to that movie? In the movie there will be bomb blast, there will be a storm. Does anything happen to the screen? Nothing happens to the screen. No, what is happening is on the movie. So movie is playing on that screen, but the screen is still. So we are all like that screen. We must separate ourselves and think that we are the consciousness. Whatever is happening outside is a Yoga Maya, universal, and that has nothing permanent there. Everything is going to change. I am the pure consciousness. So this is the highest level he is teaching. This, I think, I am sure all of you would have understood clearly. Yeah? Are we able to understand this? Padmaja?
Yes, ma'am. I'm joining after many days.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand.
But it was very nice today's session, ma'am. We should do one more session today's, whatever you have done. I think it needs an exclusive.
Yeah, we can do. But right now, let's focus on this shloka only. Right now, imagine, you have to imagine, because until you realize which is of truth, you will be imagining. After that, you can experience it. We must know the truth is, we are not an ordinary bundle of muscles and blood vessels, bones. No, we are not. We are the pure consciousness. We are. That's the truth. But we have lot of things. We have learned that, no, samskars, all that, ignorance, and we are assuming falsely. We are identifying ourselves with this body mind, with the thoughts. If we don't identify, for a while keep meditating on this part and say, I am the pure consciousness. Krishna says, you are the pure consciousness, and you are me. We are the same Krishna, we are the same Buddha, we are the same everything. And then everything else is just a projection of the universe, which includes our mind, buddhi, everything. So if you think like that, then whatever is happening is on the screen. It is a projection. I am the screen, unperturbed. I am the screen. Nothing will affect me. I am the screen. Whatever you are talking doesn't affect me. I am the pure this is actually the fact. And that's why
yeah, such a beautiful concept he comes to. I mean, he's still going on with the concept of around consciousness.
Yeah.
He begins with I am within you, and then he moves towards saying that one line you told, no, I don't dwell in you, but you dwell in me.
Yeah.
It looks so, I mean, it doesn't contrast with what he told, I am within you.
Yeah.
Then he is basically moving towards consciousness. It's more like there is a slow decompression towards, consciousness that is happening.
Yes.
He's taking us towards
that. If we assume you are Padmaja, I am Pratibha, we are like waves. Two pots. Who is the clay? The same consciousness in you and I. Therefore, he says, I cannot be Pratibha, I am consciousness. So, and you are also that. He says, Tat Tvam Asi. Actually, you are that. Tat Tvam Asi. You are also that. You are under illusion. You are thinking you are the projected film. That is your problem. You are thinking this garland is a rope. These are the examples the Upanishads give. If you perceive in a different way, how can I help you? I am telling you the truth. See, Bhagavad Gita is opening up the absolute truth. He says, you are not an ordinary person. Shunvantu Vishwe Amritasya Putra. Even Vivekananda said, roar like a lion. Why are you weeping like a weak person? Why are you yielding? So what makes us weak is we are carried away by distractions and our unwillingness to accept that we are the pure consciousness. We are the pure consciousness. We are the divine manifestation. That is our true identity. But he has also put Yoga Maya, and he is telling this now. So I am there. You are made of Yoga Maya. Yeah, your body, your mind, everything, because it becomes diseased. Why Buddha went to become a monk there? He saw people are getting aged. That means it's not permanent. People are dying. Then he said, where is that Sukha? This is not the Sukha. This is, his father's royal thing. Everything is not permanent. So, you better understand early that interaction, let it be at a superficial level, don't take anything seriously, but your effort to realize your true self, that is your consciousness, that should be followed very seriously, and that should be meditated upon, because that means we should de-hypnotize. We are hypnotized by the world conditioning. We should de-hypnotize ourselves and keep telling ourselves, I am the consciousness. But that will start coming. One second, I'll just keep it for charging.
And detached also, no?
Yeah, that detachment alone brings that. That detachment alone brings this kind of that detachment. How does it come? When you get attached to these thoughts. You want to get detached means you should get attached to something, no? Where do you get attached to? You should get attached to the higher, this higher thought. When you move from this end to when you are moving that side, and when the ship or the boat, it has to release itself from its anchor, no? It has got anchored there. If it doesn't release its anchor, how will it move? We are not moving because of our attachment. So we should remove that this thing, and one second. Sorry, both are battery is low. Yeah, okay, it's fine. So we must remove that attachment, and that attachment automatically gets released. We need not put extra effort if we move in that direction towards divinity, towards realization, towards this concept. I am the consciousness. I am the consciousness. Somebody says you are irritating me, and leave. I am the consciousness. And then you bring back that thought. Okay, I am irritating. I'll correct myself. And then correcting yourself is towards the positive and not breaking our head, not keeping those things in mind. Again, coming back, in Jnana Margadalli, Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, we are. At least when we feel weak, we must remember we don't deserve this weakness, because basically we are like roaring lions. There is one story in Upanishads, there is a lion, and the lion delivers. I have told in some other session, and the lion dies. Then this cub is brought up by sheep, and then it starts moving in the herd of sheep, and then it doesn't roar because it doesn't know. It is brought up in the it starts growing, and it starts moving with the flock of sheep, and it will just be like that sheep. It will forget its true nature. One day what happens is, as it goes deeper into the forest, that cub grows. He grows, but still he cannot roar, and he will be doing like sheep only. So when it goes into the forest, he just loses its way, and he goes there inside. He sees a lion and another lion. The lion sees him. He says, "Why are you here?" He gets too scared because he thinks he's a sheep, and then he starts running. Says, "Come." He says, he brings that cub. Is now not a cub anymore. It's a grown-up lion, another lion. He shows his reflection in the water. He says, "Look, you and I are similar. Then why can't you roar? So, roar loudly. You are not the sheep anymore." It cannot roar only. It will be doing. Then once he roars, he understands what is his capacity, what is he made of. So this story gives us goosebumps actually. We have mesmerized ourselves and we have enclosed ourselves in our own weakness, in our own shell. We don't want to come out of that shell because we have been hypnotized, conditioned several days. So now we have to dehypnotize. I am not this. I am not a weak person because I am capable of doing anything in this world. Once I told my Swamiji, I got my 10 lakhs DST grant. I told him I got DST funding. I am doing and some award and all. And he says, "Why do you underestimate? You are capable of much more things. Why do you underestimate? Being in spirituality, there is no limit." First of all, he says this is all always everything. This is not the real, right? So they always want us to work towards consciousness, realization. But if we can use this, whatever activity we are doing, if we can use this as a path and convert this in a spiritual way, the same activity which we are doing day to day, we bring out that thought again and again. I am capable of doing much more things. I am the pure consciousness. I have no limit. My potential is infinite, just like Swami Vivekananda said. Then many things can be achieved without any expectations. If we follow Karma Yoga, if we bring Bhakti into that, and we start imagining that we are limitless potential sources, just like that lion, then sky is the limit. We can do so many things. Not only things, which the activity towards that can be used, should be used rather, for our realization. Nothing other than that. Never for a selfish reason. Whatever you get, whatever accolades we get, whatever positions we get, whatever benefits we get, monetary also, should always be thought from this angle, that it should be used because anything we do, it should lead me towards this realization that I am the consciousness. So that is the shloka. I think next shlokas we can. Okay, next two are also simple, which we have already done. Sarva bhutani kaunteya prakritim yanti mamikam kalpakshaye punastani kalpadau visrujamyaham prakritim swam avashtabhya visrujami punah bhutagramam imam kritsnam avasham prakriter vashat. So this is a kind of repetition of what we have done in the last chapter. At the end of Kalpa, Kalpa means Brahma's one day. Who is the creator? Brahma is the creator. So he has created, and one day of Brahma is called as one Kalpa, and that amounts to 1000 Yuga cycles, 4.32 billion earth years, human years. 4.32 billion years of human is equivalent to one day or one Kalpa of Brahma. So he says, at the end of Kalpa, all living beings merge into my primordial energy. At the beginning of next creation, son of Kunti, I manifest them again. So last chapter also we have seen, end of his his day, everything goes back to the primordial energy in the unmanifested form. It doesn't dissolve. We still carry all our samskars, everything back, and to be born again in the beginning of next creation, I manifest them again using my own material energy I generate these forms again and again. Bhutagrama means multitude of beings, again and again. And Krishnam avasham prakriter vashat. So again he says that these people helplessly under the sway of Prakriti. This shloka is kind of repetition. Animating my Prakriti, I project again and again these multitude of beings helplessly under the sway of Prakriti. But if we realize, if we attain, if we come to know, I am not the doer, I am the pure consciousness, and if we reach that stage and experience that, then there is no need for us to come back. So that completes today's shlokas. So last two shlokas I have not gone in depth because it describes the creation and the dissolution. Creation, dissolution. Dissolution or pralaya, creation or srishti. So how much time it takes, we have seen 1000 yuga cycles, and throughout that time we may be born again, we get back again. So in that 4.32 billion years we would have had several births, and with before that pralaya maybe would have got moksha, we never know. So that can happen. Until then we keep going through billions of years, we go, we come back, we go, we come back helplessly, as though, because we have to follow a law of nature. So that completes these shlokas. So I think we have had quite an intense session. Over for your thoughts. It's late, but we can take one or two suggestions. Or yeah, Peter, any thoughts on this? Would you like to add something?
No, not particularly, Pratibha. I did enjoy it very much. I like the line in the first shloka of this book about
Rajaguhya, Rajat Vidya, that one?
Anusya Yave. Excuse me, Anasuya.
Anasuya, yeah. I also like that, yes.
That describes me well.
Yes.
He says he is one who does not disbelieve. He does not.
Correct.
My translation also says one who does not sneer, make fun of.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that can be interpreted like that. One who does not. Come back again.
Oh, the word is sneer.
Sneer. Okay.
Sneer, to make fun of.
Fun of, yes.
Or reject.
Yes, you are right. Actually, Peter is a English professor, I think, isn't it? You are English professor, right? English literature. Yes. Yeah. That's the right word actually. Grossly I told not jealous or not impure and all. Yeah, one who does not make fun of. You are very correct. That describes Anasuya.
I like it because it tells us that Arjuna still has a little wee bit of he's not a full believer. He's someone who does not disbelieve.
Disbelieve, yes.
As opposed to someone who believes.
Yes. Okay.
Little difference. That's the literature professor in me.
Okay.
That distinction.
Yeah, you said someone who does not disbelieve compared to someone who believes.
Double negative as opposed to positive.
Correct. That Anasuya is that. Correct. He has used it like that.
Arjuna is still holding back a little bit.
Yes.
And that's why we get the Vishvarupa later.
Yes. Next 11. I was seeing when will I reach that 11th chapter. Wonderful chapter. 11th is the best chapter of all. All are good, but that is something, it makes you really